Thank you all for being here today. We've had a series of these this week, and really delighted to be here for this forum. I'm Lee Pelton. I'm president and CEO of the Boston Foundation, and it's a real pleasure to welcome you to today's forum, Voices of Experience, the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program. At the Boston Foundation, we know that stable, and you know it as well, that stable, affordable housing is critical for the well-being of Massachusetts families and the future of our Commonwealth and of our city and of our region. We also know that we are in a housing crisis, one which low-income residents experience as chronic lack of affordable housing. For them, in turn, this creates a disproportionate cost burden, increased stressors, instability for themselves and their families, and the daily threat of displacement and disruption. Like me, I know you all believe that we must do everything we can do to advance housing justice for all members of our community and change these terrible conditions. Why, you might ask? Well, because we know what happens when we do. As participants reported in the study you will soon learn about, when their rent is limited to 30% or less of their household income, they have more opportunities to improve their job situations. Their children do better in schools and create stronger community connections. Knowing this, we can all be proud that Massachusetts created the first and now the oldest rental voucher program in the United States, which also served as a model for the federal Section 8 program, which, as we all know, has its limits. In fact, at this moment, we can and should be especially proud that the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program, or MRVP, unlike the federal Section 8 program, does not seek out an applicant's immigration status. Yes. Yay for Massachusetts. It provides rental assistance to more than 10,000 low-income Massachusetts households. And as we know, behind this data point of more than 10,000 low-income households are real people and real lives and real families, something that especially now can get lost in our current political climate. This is important because we understand that the policies and programs that we help design and advocate and fund must be centered on the voices and experiences of people and their communities. This report, Voices of Experience, does just that. It captures the voices of tenants and landlords to better understand the impact of the program and the changes that can make MRVP even more effective. We seek to understand the experience of study participants. Let us also keep in mind that there are hundreds of thousands of households who are eligible for rental assistance but don't receive it. Households whose incomes just cannot afford rents. These include, of course, seniors and youth and people with disabilities and others, of course. This is the reality. And even so, just last week, the Trump administration released its funding recommendations for fiscal year 2026, proposing block granting funds to states for several housing programs, including Section 8 tenant-based and project-based rental assistance. No surprise, this would result in devastation to the tune of $26.7 million overall from these programs. I meant to say billion, not million. And so while we will all be learning more and strategizing over the coming days and weeks, we know that MRVP has never been a more important tool to help us meet this moment. And let's be clear, no state, no municipality, no philanthropic organization can fill that gaping hole created by the withdrawal of this level of federal funding. But in Massachusetts and Greater Boston, we already have the blueprint for supporting our residents, and we must recommit to doing all we can to expand and improve MRP. Luckily, and a governor and a lieutenant governor, we have an administration that deeply understands the pivotal role that MRVP plays in providing affordability to residents. And in all of you, we have tireless, skilled, committed partners on the front lines of this effort, and we thank you so very much for that. Before I turn it over to Soni Gupta, our Associate Vice President of Community Wealth, let me first offer my praise and gratitude to her and to her team for their ongoing commitment to this work, to advancing housing justice as a key driver in building communities and well-being and wealth in our city and our Commonwealth. Soni, no, I'm not done yet. Your leadership is critical, pivotal, and magnificent to all that we do here at TBF, and I want to thank you. And I know everybody wants to give you applause before you come up.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Lee, for grounding remarks and for welcoming our partners to the foundation to this event. The fact that we're all gathered here is testament to the power of lived experience and to learning and hearing from participants. So this initiative was conceived by two people in this room today, Chris Norris, Joe Kreisberg, talking about, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to hear directly from people who utilize MRVP, landlords, tenants, even the agencies that help administer it. And when they spoke about this to people in the field, we all went running in to say, we want to be part of this because we know how critical it is to hear from people with lived experience. Organizations came forward to help fund it. There are 9 funders, and it's a range of funding, people putting in what they could from their particular organizations. And a coalition formed around the organizations that were particularly committed. So we had the state, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and our partners are here. Well, I don't see her here, but she, very, very critical at the table every single day. And we had nonprofit partners and others, Mass Polling Group, Metro Housing Boston, CHAPA, and funders, Regional Housing Network, and then funders in United Way and the Boston Foundation. This was a collaborative effort of the best kind. We also recognize how critical it was to have voices of the community and our community-based organizations who are often the first stop for residents, whether or not they're dealing with housing or other issues. And so we were delighted to welcome BAMSI and La Colaborativa to this effort. And as with MRVP, there are people representing these organizations, and I hope you look at the front pages of the report to see just who was involved in this terrific effort. Some of these folks are participating in the program today. We have Olivia Wine from Mass Polling Group, who will present the survey findings, who held us all together every week for a long time. Beverly Williams, our thoughtful, wise partner from BAMSI, will introduce Adrian and Trevor for their statements and will also participate in the panel discussion. We have Sarah Bartley from United Way of Massachusetts Bay, who will moderate the panel, and finally Rachel Heller from CHAPA, who will offer closing remarks. So before I turn it over to Olivia, I just want to say again that we are really grateful to have been able to work so closely together with all of our partners. This is what a joint effort looks like, this is what collaboration looks like, and may all of our efforts be so collaborative and strong in order to affect change. So Olivia, please do come up and share your wisdom with us.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Olivia Wine. I'm a research director at the Mass Inc. Polling Group, and today I'm going to talk about a project that we did on MRVP. But before I talk about the findings, I just want to give a very brief overview of MRVP as it relates to the findings. So MRVP provides rental assistance to more than 10,700 low-income Massachusetts households. As of February 2025, there are 168,000 people in waiting for a voucher. Households that make less than 80% of the area median income where they live are eligible for a voucher. Tenants pay 30% of their gross income towards rent. However, some exclusions apply, such as childcare, and then MRVP covers the remainder and pays that directly to the landlord. Vouchers are administered through 9 regional administering agencies and about 100 local housing authorities. And for the sake of this presentation, we're going to call them all housing agencies. They offer 2 types of vouchers: a mobile voucher, which means you can use it anywhere in the state of Massachusetts, and a project-based voucher, which is connected to specific properties. And once a tenant has received their voucher, they have 120 days to find an apartment. I'm not going to go through all of this because it's a lot, but I'm just going to say briefly that this project consisted of both quantitative and qualitative analysis. For our quantitative analysis, we did a survey of 989 MRVP rental voucher holders and a survey of 175 landlords who rent to voucher holders. And for our qualitative analysis, we did 2 focus groups of MRVP recipients and 11 interviews with landlords. All of this information is going to be available on the slide deck, which will be on our website, but it's also in the methods section of the report, which you can take a physical copy of at the end of this event, but it's also going to be available online on both TBF's website and our website. I'm also going to skip this slide. You can check it out. We're just going to dig into the key findings right now, okay? So our first key finding is that MRVP vouchers work well for tenants. And this finding came from the MRVP tenant survey and the focus groups. Really what we're seeing here is that tenants' housing situation has improved. A majority of tenants prior to receiving a voucher lived in shelter, shared space, or were unhoused. Those who lived in shelter increased from 33% to 41% for folks who have children. We do have a quote from the focus group that really gets to this point. "My kids aren't living in a shelter apartment. My kids are with me. I am not in fear that my children are going to be taken by DCF because I can't provide stable living." Another key finding is that tenants really like their neighborhood and their home. You can see here in red how folks feel about their neighborhood, and in gray how folks feel about their current home. And a majority, 62%, like their neighborhood and 59% like their current home. In addition to this, 82% are saying that they think that their home is comfortable, and 76% are saying that there's enough space for themselves and for their family. One quote that gets to this point is, "I have working heat here. My last apartment, the heat didn't work well and we were freezing, but I'm grateful we can be warm." We're also seeing a number of different positive impacts from vouchers. So from these vouchers. So you can see here in the dark red, folks that strongly agree with each of these statements, and in the pink, folks that somewhat agree, and a majority agree with all of these statements. That their children are doing better in school, that it's easier to keep a job, that they're able to improve their credit and become financially stable, and that they're able to save more money to pay for food, medicine, and other essentials. And finally, that they're more active in their community. I do want to note the really strong numbers on strongly agree that children are doing better in school and that it's easier to keep a job, 49% and 60%. Our second finding is that landlords see a range of benefits from vouchers, and this came from the landlord interviews as well as the landlord survey. Landlords are satisfied with MRVP. 70% are at least somewhat satisfied, and the same amount are likely to seek out rental voucher holders in the future. A lot of interviewees said that they didn't have a strong preference between voucher holders and non-voucher holding tenants, and one quote that gets to this point is, "I don't choose between one or the other. My criteria for qualifying a market tenant is more vigorous than qualifying a housing voucher tenant when it comes to income, because their income is subsidized. You promote to everyone, you give everyone the opportunity." There's also a range of benefits that landlords are seeing from renting to voucher holders, but By and away, the highest one is that 81% see the main benefit as guaranteed consistent rent payments. 50% also say that having a positive impact on their community is a benefit, and 38% say that reduced tenant turnover rates is a benefit. We do see a lot of this reflected as well in the interviews, and some quotes that get to that are, of course, the portion that I get from the housing agency is guaranteed. The portion that the tenant pays, sometimes they pay, sometimes they get delayed, and we have to go back and forth. But I think there is a positive to it. Someone else said, it balances out because I'm able to get the market rate for sure. Whereas with the cash tenant, I gave it at a discount after I had gone through so many people and nobody had the rent to income ratio I was looking for. Another landlord stated, a voucher holder, when they move into the unit, they tend to stay for a very long time. Some of my tenants have been there almost 10 years. And finally, one landlord stated, and I just like helping people. Our third finding is that navigating the system is challenging for both tenants and landlords. And this comes from the focus groups, the interviews, and both surveys. Landlords are listing a number of challenges that they're experiencing when they're interacting with housing agencies. And you can see here that we have 3 different questions that get to this in the survey. So 52% say coordinating with the housing agency is a challenge when leasing to a tenant. When asked what challenges they had renting to tenants, 43% said lack of communication from the housing agency and 35% said lack of accountability. And when asked the open-ended question, what changes would they do to improve MRVP, 26% said communication with the housing agency, 13% said help with streamlining of leasing and the renewal process, and 12% said helping landlords with late or no rent and communication about rent change to tenants. Additionally, 59% of landlords mentioned delays in processing paperwork as a challenge. This could be partially due to challenges with housing agencies, and it could be just internal challenges that they're facing. We do hear a number of different quotes about this in the interviews. One landlord stated, the one reform that would be good is the contact point. Where you send your application was completely obscure. If our tenant's daughter hadn't told me where to send it, it would have gone into outer space. Having a direct phone line would have been a lot easier, just to answer quick questions rather than an email going to perhaps a shared inbox. I'm not sure who it goes to. Once the tenant is in the unit and the caseworker or the social worker has helped them get into the unit, they become more hands-off, which for us is difficult because tenants, most of the time, still need that continued care. And finally, I honestly don't even know the difference between a lot of the programs. Sorry. I think this quote was in reference to the difference between Section 8, MRVP, and the housing agencies within both of those programs. And I think this really, really gets to the point that people just have a hard time understanding the system as a whole and how it functions. Tenants also face a number of challenges when working within the system. When asked the open-ended question, what would they change to improve MRVP, 16% discussed housing agency communication, customer service, and case management. But we really heard so much more about this in the focus groups. And here are some quotes that get to that. We have to sit on hold for like 5 hours. Then the call will get disconnected. Once you get to number 1, you have to sit on hold for another 3 hours. Someone else said, I have absolutely no idea what to do because I was 100% lost. It was impossible to reach anybody, and because of that, it created so much anxiety. Another tenant stated, no one will ever get back to you. I sent in my recertification package last year. No one ever got back to me. Now it's time to recertify, and I'm still waiting on paperwork. And finally, another tenant stated, they lose a lot of our information too. When I go down to the office is so packed, they're still losing my information. And finally, our final finding, which came primarily from the tenant focus groups and survey, is that tenants are still having difficulty making ends meet and achieving economic mobility. You see here a chart where in red, it's the length of time to receive a voucher after applying, and in gray, it's the length of time to find an apartment after they've received the voucher. And you can see here that 45%, nearly half, it takes over a year to receive a voucher after applying. And this gets to that 168,000 people who are on waiting for a voucher. Additionally, a majority take over a month to find an apartment. We heard in focus groups that there are so many different challenges finding an apartment, and we heard it repeatedly. But here's one quote that I think gets to a large number of these challenges. Just finding someone who would take the type of voucher we have is a challenge. And if we had the money, the first, the last, security, and if we made 3 times what the rent costs, and also credit scores. Now they're doing a deep dive into our credit, so they won't even take us if we have a bad credit score. And just the process. Even if you have to apply for raft, some of the landlords don't want to do the raft paperwork for you. I had to ask for an extension to even find a place to allow me to move in. Now, I just want to go over extensions really briefly as it relates to this. Prior to January 24th, 2025, tenants could ask for 2 30-day extensions to find an apartment. But presently, extensions are only allowed for reasonable accommodations. We're also seeing a lot of variability in who can afford to pay rent. We see here overall that 76% of the entire survey could pay their portion of the rent always or most of the time. But this decreases with larger households, households with children, people on the lower and the higher end of the income spectrum, and younger tenants. We believe that this is a challenge for folks in the higher end of the income spectrum due to something called cliff effects. This means that the more income they have, the more their contribution towards rent is, and also potentially the loss of other public assistance, such as food stamps. And we're also seeing a number of different impacts from inability to pay rent. You'll see here in gray some positive impacts, and in blue some negative impacts. In the leftmost column, it's folks who can always afford to pay rent. In the middle, folks who can afford to pay rent most of the time. And on the right, folks who can afford to pay rent some of the time or less. And you can see that it decreases every time for these positive impacts. It decreases every time that the ability to pay rent decreases. So one example is that 73% of folks who can always afford to pay rent state that the condition of their home is excellent or good. But this goes down to 62% for folks who can afford rent most of the time, and 48% who can afford some of the time or less. This same pattern applies for folks who said they like their home, folks who say they receive repairs in 2 days or less, folks who strongly agree that their children are doing better in school and strongly agree that it's easy to keep a job, folks who feel safe in their neighborhood, folks who say their landlords are very helpful with concerns. Now, we're seeing the opposite pattern with these negative impacts. We see that 18% of folks who can always afford to pay rent state that they're treated unfairly during the search process, but that goes up to 40% for folks who can afford their rent some of the time or less. This same pattern applies for folks who say that the quality of their home has worsened. And finally, we're seeing that there's a number of difficulties building equity. We see a graph here where in red, it's where folks think they'll be living in 5 years, and in pink, it's where folks would like to be living in 5 years. And half of those who would like to be living in a home that they buy and own believe that they will be doing so. We talked a lot about building equity in homeownership in our focus groups. And one quote that really gets to this is, "Eventually, I do want to own my own home. And the problem is, the way that the program is set up, there is no real exit ramp. Like with Section 8, there are some programs in the state that allow you to build equity by applying the payments towards home ownership. And I feel like if the MRV program were altered in such a way that you could change those payments towards home ownership, it would get people self-reliant, it would increase the tax base, it would reduce people that are dependent on state aid, it would allow us to build equity and build wealth." I do want to note that this is referring to HUD's Family Self-Sufficiency Program, and that MRVP does offer a similar program, but only 8 of the housing agencies offer it, so a significant number of MRVP voucher recipients do not have access to it. And finally, on the difficulties of building equity, I want to once again mention that 168,000 people are in waiting for a voucher. And if equity is able to be built and home ownership is able to be achieved, then that person would be able to exit the program and that spot would be available to another. That's the end of my presentation today. I'm happy to answer any questions during the Q&A portion of the event. And again, the report will be available at the end and online. I am now going to pass it to Beverly Williams, the Executive Vice President of Behavioral Health and Community Services at BAMSI. She has been so instrumental in this process. Thank you all.
Thank you, Olivia. On behalf of the board and the CEO at BAMSI, I am thankful for the planners in including us in this process, giving us a voice on that panel. And I was really impressed just by the collaborative work, by the demonstrated diligence and intentionality of including the voices of tenants and landlords. So I just really want to stop and thank all those who were part of this collaborative effort. It really made a difference. And I'm proud today that we not only have seen quotes from the PowerPoint presented by Olivia, but today, guess what? You get a treat. You get to hear from two individuals who shared with us. And so you get live voices. You get to hear from Adrian, who is a voucher holder, and you get to hear from Trevor, who is a landlord. And so I invite them up. First, you would hear from Adrian, and then you'll hear from Trevor. Please welcome them.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I just have some light information. Just going to tell you a little bit about myself and just kind of jump in. My name is Adrian, and I live in the Boston area, and I have been a voucher holder for almost 3 years. I reside and currently stay at the location that I've stayed at for the same amount of time. During my initial application, I initially applied for Metro around 2005, and I did not receive any information, type of notification, feedback while I was waiting. And so I took it upon myself to figure out, hey, like, what's going on? I have my children's personal information, I have my personal information, so I was kind of at the high anxiety about that. So in 2020, just before the COVID pandemic, I found out that they built a new office near the Roxbury Crossing. And I actually took it upon myself and called them and said, hey, I just wanted to know, was my name still on the list? They told me that I would have to come down there. I always try to make a way, so I did so. I went to the office, which was extremely crowded. I felt that a lot of other parents and children were there, which made it very difficult for both the parents and the staff to work and try to get all this information. Again, this was during ending towards the ending of COVID, and they were limiting a lot of number of people in the office on top of it being a new setup. They had no idea or no clue about my application and stated that they could not find it. I became a little frenzied because I just realized, again, all of our personal information was on this application I submitted. So I had to redo the paperwork and submit it all over again. I handed them the paperwork, but I was not sure this would work, let alone would I even have a spot on the list having to start back from the very beginning, or would they lose my paperwork again? My neighbor at the time and a couple of co-workers encouraged me not to give up, but at this time I needed a larger space to help me to be persistent. Although I did not receive notifications or updates about my application, I was surprised indeed that they did handle it. About 6 months later, almost close into a year, I received a letter in the mail stating that I have finally been approved for a voucher. Maybe the new location was helpful with them opening the office. Did Metro need the extra office space? Who knows? It worked. Looking for a unit became the next difficult challenge during this process. I have two children, one under the age of, both of them actually under the age of 18. I have one close to 18 now. So they were very specific on requirements and considered things that I had to consider, such as changing schools, commuting. At this time, I no longer had a vehicle, supermarket. So these are all things that I tried to factor in. Throughout the process, I could also sense that which landlords wanted to deal with voucher holders and some who didn't, even though they wouldn't say it. They also considered the time frame that was given to me to find a unit. I tried very hard to find a unit. Eventually, I did have to request for an extension. This became very, very difficult, especially if you have children that's going to school full-time, plus after school, and also I was working a full-time job. I'm working a full-time job as well. During my search, I received advice for many people, but I had to be careful who and what I listened to because each person's situation was different based on specifics. I realized that there are many different factors which affecting locating and being approved for a unit. These factors may include things in the number of children you have, the ages, the number of people, amount of space you need, and sometimes if someone has a disability or special needs or etc. Finally, in the early 2022, I found and chose the unit which I now live in. They provided me with additional space, a quiet neighborhood, and very safe community. I no longer have to hear loud sounds of fire engines, ambulance, and police cars, sirens as they pass on a daily basis. Next, the rent. Before Section 8, I was under a subsidized company development, which also was calculated according to my income. When I received Section 8, I ended up paying more rent, but I had to consider I had more space and lived in the quiet neighborhood which came with multiple playgrounds for my kids. I absolutely needed space, and as I had another child by this time. I understand that the rent is determined by my gross and not by my out-of-pocket money I receive. This is unfortunate. As an example, I got a new position, a promotion at my job, making a little bit more money. However, my gross income has increased. Now I bring home less due to the deductions. When I report the increased salary and information to Metro, I will be paying more for my rent due to my reported gross income. I am, however, bringing home less money. I understand the rent, how it's determined, but I do feel like it's not fair. My out-of-pocket expenses, in addition to paying my out-of-pocket money, must cover food, utilities, telephone expenses, childcare, traveling, which would be me commuting back and forth to work. These are just some of the things that I have to factor in. I at least try to make a minimum payment on the back bills, but it's not helpful as it keeps pulling me back. I'm literally drowning and struggling sometimes. I do need to find a higher job, but if I do, everything is going to keep going up. The gross income math may be correct, but the math is just not is matching my needs and what I need to afford the net income I bring home. I have tried several ways to help ends meet, even taking back medical coverage just as to catch up or catch ahead. You know that they say in robbing Peter to pay Paul, why I have left Peter and Paul and now I'm looking for Mark and Michael. I at times feel stuck and at a standstill, but trying not to complain. But the reality, the struggle is real. And that is my short story of being a Massachusetts voucher holder. Again, it has some pros and it has its cons. I try to balance that out. I think all of us do. And that's it. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Adrian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Trevor Samios. I'm a senior vice president at Wynn Companies based here in Boston. In my role, I support our operations solutions divisions across our affordable and mixed income housing portfolio. Nationally, our organization manages 140,000 affordable apartment homes across 800 communities in 27 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. Here in Massachusetts, we manage 20,000 affordable and mixed income homes, properties we own, and also those in partnership with the Commonwealth's most innovative community development corporations, large and small nonprofits, mission-driven funds, housing authorities, and resident-owned cooperatives. As the largest private operator of affordable housing in Massachusetts, I'm proud to say that in addition to the hundreds of thousands of residents who find a home in one of our communities each year through federal assistance and the low-income housing tax credit, we support over nearly 1,000 families utilizing the MRVP program. I want to begin by saying that I'm not throwing out our organization's resume to help you slide into a mid-morning nap here. I've outlined that work to show that our scale has given us the experience and perspective to understand the MRVP program over decades. Its merit, its strengths, its weaknesses, and its delivery mechanisms through RAAs and local housing authorities across Massachusetts. That experience allows me to say that this program is not important to the Commonwealth. It's essential. Every day, our teams work directly with individuals and families who are doing everything right. They're commuting to their jobs and thinking about their next step in their careers. They're raising children, like Adrian, and grappling with all the fear and hope that comes with being a parent. They're taking care of loved ones out of duty to family. They're navigating an increasingly complex web in this world, especially now, and many do so as a single caregiver, in a second language, or in tandem with a second job. All carry weight on their back. But even in doing everything right, so many can still not afford the rising cost of living in our cities and towns. The scarcity of federal housing choice vouchers and the affordable housing supply challenges in this state, like every single other state, leaves too many people, 168,000, in limbo, with Massachusetts now holding the mantle of the 5th largest homeless population in the country. This is where MRVP lives. It is not a handout, it is not a temporary gap filler, but a strong and vital bridge between that limbo and real stability for families. I'll be clear, as Adrian pointed out, that MRVP and its administration are not perfect. Neither are the organizations that accept vouchers, and neither are many of the folks that are cobbling information together to receive one. But that is more of a budget problem than one of aspiration for any of those parties. MRVP grants an individual or a family the opportunity to have something that we all take for granted every single day, the chance to live or stay near their jobs, their children's schools, their churches, their families, the support of their community. And for so many, it grants the opportunity to exit homelessness quickly, and for far more, it stops homelessness before it starts in the first place. As an owner and operator of affordable housing, it allows us the opportunity to say yes to all of that. For our clients who have worked so hard to develop affordable and mixed income housing with the intention of creating or sustaining vibrant economic development and diverse communities, MRVP provides the means to keep both the lights on and build more. It gives these organizations predictable rental income that they then reinvest in the maintenance of those communities or push to catalyze new affordable housing development. It reduces the liability of vacancy, which spurs investor confidence to fund more housing we desperately need here. For Boston, MRVP helps to hold on to the economic diversity that benefits every single citizen and business in this city. Without its sustenance and growth, the reverse is absolutely true as well. Without the growth of MRVP, let alone keeping it where it is, that work becomes much harder. It means more evictions. It means more people cycling through emergency shelters. It means more families choosing between housing and every single other thing in their lives. And that cost, forget the dollar cost of that, but in dignity and lost opportunity for our neighborhoods is something we all share. So I began by talking about the scale of our work because one of the benefits of that scale is we've been able to reinvest in supportive services, programming, and partnerships alongside those vouchers with many organizations that are in this room today. We know that MRVP can help recipients be successful in reaching their goals and the dreams they have for their families. And just like the study, that investment's allowed our organization to gather feedback from 20,000 individuals every single year for the past decade. And I wanted to share a bit about the power and potential of this program for the 1,000 families that we house through MRVP in our portfolio. 89% feel that their rent and utilities are manageable and in balance with their income and everyday expenses. 96% feel their home is safe and healthy for their families. 57% of individuals plan to increase their income in a work advancement this year. 80% say their children have access to high quality and affordable early education, educational resources, and the support they need to be successful in school. 81%, and this is important right now, are registered to vote and actively participate in local, state, and national elections. 97% have health insurance and visit their primary care each year, and 75% have financial goals and feel confident in their ability to reach them. So on behalf of 40 Massachusetts clients for our organization, we categorically agree with the findings of this important study and are grateful for the opportunity to have participated in its voice, and I urge everyone here to give volume to the importance of the MRVP program, to protect it, to expand it, if we truly believe the Commonwealth is a place for everyone, regardless of income, to find a home and a future. Thank you.
I'm Sarah Bartley from the United Way, and I'm really glad to be here with you this morning. I'm really excited for you to get to meet a panel in just a minute. So first of all, thank you, Adrian and Trevor, for teeing up a discussion around, well, what do we do now with this information? And I want to say you teed it up perfectly because, you know, I think what you shared was at a basic fundamental level, this program is working to provide housing stability to, we heard over 10,000 individuals and families. And my theory, personal theory of action is, if we know something works, we should do more of it. And we should make it even better. And so in the spirit of that, I really am so excited for you to get to meet this panel because we're gonna shift gears into talking about the report's recommendations. What can we do to make this program better, and what would that really look like? What would it mean on the ground? So I'm gonna ask each of our panelists today to introduce themselves. I would love for you to share who you are, a little bit about how your organization leverages the MRVP program, and can you introduce us to your community? Like, what's great is we have folks from across the state, so could you share where you're located and a little bit about what it means? What does this program mean for people in your community? So we can just go right down the line.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Corley. I'm the CEO of NeighborWorks Housing Solutions. Is that on okay? Can you hear me? Okay. We operate in Bristol, Norfolk, and Plymouth counties with offices in Quincy, Brockton, Kingston, New Bedford, Fall River, and Taunton. We administer over 4,000 vouchers, of which about 1,000 are MRVP. And we also are a developer of affordable housing. In our portfolio of about 2,500 units, about 30% of those units are project-based, of which about 50% of those are MRVP. This is a critical resource, particularly in our gateway cities that we're operating in.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Beverly Williams, Executive Vice President at BAMSI, Brockton Area Multi-Service, Inc. We've since changed our name to just BAMSI because we are across the Southeast Massachusetts. And how we help, we have a program called the Helpline. And Helpline is basically there to provide just that help. And one of the greatest needs we found is housing. And so we help negotiate with landlords, we help go with individuals to offices to help them get housing. For a lot of people who speak different languages, they need that support. Some people are at different academic levels and may not understand the process. We negotiate that. We are really brokers. And we also help with some payments. There are times people do have a rough time. And so Helpline is able to get some funding in that area.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Keith Ferry. I'm from Wayfinders. We're based in Springfield, Massachusetts. We work across the housing continuum from homelessness to homeownership. So we see all aspects of the MRVP program as a solution. As a landlord, we see it. As an administrator of the program in our region in Hampden and Hampshire County, we see its impact in communities that are gateway cities, as Rob mentioned, are really important places, our suburban communities, and even our rural communities, where it's a key linchpin to creating housing and maintaining stable housing for communities across Western Massachusetts. As we do this work, we administer about 5,500 vouchers. About 1,250 of those are MRVP vouchers, split evenly between project-based and mobile vouchers. So we see that the opportunity to work with landlords is a key part of our work.
Great. So we're going to move into some questions. I want to feature in each of these questions one of the recommendations of this report, and then give you the chance to sort of hear from each of these panelists how that recommendation might play out, get their take on it. So the first recommendation is going to be for you, Rob. So we heard from Trevor, from Adrian, from Olivia, that this program is working, right? It is giving people the opportunity to put down roots in their community. And one of the very first recommendation, really growing out of that finding that the program is working, is that the state should codify and expand access to vouchers. So Rob, I'd love for people to hear, from your perspective, I think especially in the southeastern part of the state, what would be some of the benefits to codifying and expanding this program? And then what would be some of the downsides if we don't do that? What would be some of the sort of costs of inaction?
Yeah, so as you know, we've been trying to codify this program for many, many years, and I believe the time is certainly now when we see the environment at the federal level and programs that we've been relying on for 40 years just vanishing or disappearing. It's very important that the state makes a statement here and takes this from a line item and makes it statute. As was mentioned earlier by Trevor, this is vital to all of our housing production. And I think, as was mentioned by Adrian and noted in the report, is some of the administrative problems that exist could be remedied by making this statute and making it a program that's permanent, and we can build on it and grow from there and improve the system for everyone, landlords and tenants included. And it will present some predictability for housing developers as well. Expansion, I think, is also somewhat obvious based on the report and the benefits that we've heard. We have hundreds of thousands of people waiting to access this program, and hundreds of thousands more that are eligible potentially. And not expanding this is putting more families at risk of getting into homelessness and preventing them from getting out of homelessness. So the risks are realities for so many families right now that are living in these conditions and are slipping further and further into the abyss here. And we really need to expand this program very soon. In addition to that, I feel like upstream funding here, this is a more efficient use of our resources. So getting families where they are somewhat stable and preventing them from slipping into homelessness is critically important, and it's fiscally responsible to be investing in MRVP as opposed to the shelter system, where things are way more expensive downstream, and the costs and the rebuilding of people out of homelessness is so much more expensive. So it's time now to expand this program, recognize it as a vital part of our housing ecosystem, and we cannot produce more affordable housing for extremely low-income individuals without project-based subsidies. It's impossible, and MRVP is a key part of that.
Yeah, I can feel in the room a desire to respond to this, right? We know that homelessness has a human cost and it has an economic cost, and the more time we in this room spend getting to know that human and economic cost, the more this program seems to make a whole lot of sense, right? So let's do what makes sense. Let's do what works. Thanks for that. Keith, I want to go over to you because I think we heard in this room from Adrian in particular this desire, and from Trevor as well, this desire for the program and those who administer the program to be really accountable, transparent, communicate well. And so that's something that as we sort of wade through that feedback, the team really thought about how do we make a recommendation around this. And the recommendation we landed around was really for administrators to be able to be accountable to the stakeholders of the program and to communicate well. And so we want to hear a bit from your perspective. What are some barriers that you would want us to understand to building a accountable, communicative administration effort? And what are some of the things you're trying within your own shop to make that possible?
I'll just say that I appreciate the concern and the real challenge that all people face in administering these programs, whether they're local housing authorities, they're lightly staffed, or regional administering agencies like the ones that Rob and I run. We all want to create greater transparency. We all want the program to work better. So we're partners in that. The challenge with all of these things is around resources and how we get it's a people challenge, right? You have to have the people there to help the people and do it in a way that meets everyone's needs, from landlords to tenants. And the other challenge I would say is really thinking about the tools that we're using. One of the things that actually is happening right now, and we're all getting trained on, we're going to be using a new voucher management system that's going to, I think, make a big difference. The current system that we have doesn't work very effectively. It often causes great frustration for our employees in terms of processing recertifications and tenant changes and interim changes and all those things that occur on a day-to-day basis. So it's not from a lack of trying. Sometimes the systems actually work against us. Sometimes the systems don't work at all. So just pulling back the curtain a little bit in terms of what we're dealing with, that's something that our employees are often challenged with. The good news is that along with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities and the regional administering agencies in particular, we're investing in a new system. And that system will be up and running within the next several months. And we're all being trained on it now to be able to use it more effectively, so that we should see better communication and better engagement and better transparency. Some of the things that we've done at Wayfinders that are to try to improve, and we're always continuously trying to improve the work that we do with our tenants and with our landlords and our voucher holders in particular. We've done a lot to transform our staffing pattern. So we have changed that, so we have someone dedicated just dealing with our project-based work, and then we have other people who are more specialized in mobile vouchers. But we've also then cross-trained people, so in like all of us who have employees, especially in this economy, there's a lot of people, a lot of bodies who come in and out, right? We train, and then sometimes that person goes on to find better employment or different employment. And so we've found the need to create a much more flexible set of colleagues to work with by giving them the training and the cross-training to work with our voucher holders, so that if someone comes into the office, any one of us can help them. The other thing that we have done is really focus on improving our in-person and online supports. So many people have the ability and capability to engage with us in different ways, and so we're trying to meet them where we can as best we can by making appointments, by offering walk-in service, and doing all these things. But the issue always becomes volume. And as Adrian talked about, sometimes our lobby is full too. We have 3 different locations that we operate out of in Springfield, Holyoke, and Northampton, and we can be at great volumes, not just because of MRVP, but because of all the programs and the housing crisis that we're all dealing with. So that's another big challenge for our agencies, is that as we get all the incoming around housing issues and housing challenges. And so it is often hard when we are not always able to staff ourselves the way we would like to. And to the point that Rob was talking about in codification, in the current line item, it says how much we can get paid, or the minimum we can get paid, and we just get paid a little bit more than that today, which is $50 per voucher per month. And that's not on par with what we're getting paid for Section 8 or Housing Choice vouchers. There's some differences in what we're doing there in terms of inspections and other things, but we need to get more resources to be able to be more responsive. And I think that's really one of the key things I want to leave people with, is that we want to be more responsive. Our goal, some of the things that we're doing are already helping us be more responsive, but in order to get over that, some of the bigger hurdles here, it's going to need more people to be able to be there and be responsive.
Thank you. So Beverly, I want to come to you next. The report, I think, helping to elevate those voices of both tenants and landlords. I personally was really encouraged to see that landlords like the program, right? And to really understand the specific reasons they like the program. Because I don't know if our perception is always that they do like the program. And so it was certainly encouraging to see. And maybe if more landlords knew that others liked the program, they would be willing to look for tenants or take tenants that have vouchers. I would love for you to kind of get into the details of helping someone lease up with a voucher. You support community members who are trying to do that and connecting with landlords. We have a recommendation around the Commonwealth investing in broad outreach and education about the program to make that transaction easier, smoother. And so can you give us a sense from your own perspective, what are some of the barriers that people are facing as they try to find a unit with that voucher and lease up? What would a communications effort do to help you with your job?
Yeah. What we hear from individuals is that at times just even beginning with information sharing, understanding. Sometimes we put out information, but it's not clear. We understand it because we're in the business. So we get it, but it's not very clear for voucher holders. And because the people in the offices may be busy, taking a question or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 from a voucher holder gets frustrating. And both sides then get angry and it doesn't work. And we've had to go in. One of the things BAMSI has done is we started doing some meetings with landlords and just sharing, help us understand what are your challenges, because in that way we could cross-refer. And some of the areas we know that tenants, they want a better place to live. They want a place with a playground. They want somewhere that's safe. They want to know that their rent is not going to change drastically if they get a promotion at work. It helps with mobility. They want to know that their apartment is kept well done. They want to know they can communicate easily with their landlord, or somehow get to them and get a response. So those are really some of the keynotes, but I do think marketing is very important, communication, and we just have to find a way to communicate and not lose paperwork. It's anxiety provoking. That's one of the common concerns we hear, is my paperwork's lost, and could you imagine it has some information about me that's really, really intimate, and what's going to happen if it gets in the wrong hand? That's one of the biggest concerns we've had. And I must say, in meeting with landlords, we've had great success. Everybody really wants this to work. And so it's all about continuous quality improvement.
Yeah, your role is so important then in really helping to translate between and make sure that everyone working together to lease this unit up, to lease this household up, understands the process, can do their part, and to smooth anxieties when they arise, because it's no doubt an anxiety-provoking experience if this voucher is between you and not having a place to live. So we can all really appreciate the role that you are playing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I want to put out a question for everyone, and I want to give each of you the chance to answer this question. During our focus groups, voucher holders shared I think graciously, their appreciation for the program, as well as their aspirations to be able to move on in some way, whether it was to find a new unit than the one they had, or whether it was to be able to increase their income, as we heard from Adrian, in a way that actually allows them to continue to be able to afford food and childcare and other basics. Others said they wanted to invest the value of their voucher. They aspired to buy a home, and they wish they could invest the value of their voucher. These were all really important things for us to hear as we think about the design of the program. So I want to kind of put this question out to each of you. I'm going to start, actually, I think, with Keith. So I understand your organization, as well as Rob's, has participated in the state self-sufficiency program. You've been doing it for about 5 years since it began. And I would love for people to hear about it. How does that sort of help people to overcome some of these barriers, and maybe anything else you're doing? How's the program working, and anything else you're doing to enhance it?
Great, thank you. So the State Self-Sufficiency Program, otherwise known as SSP, is a program, as already described, where voucher holders can work on economic mobility goals and save some of that escrow some of their rent increases if their income increases toward an economic mobility goal, which could be home ownership. And so we provide lots of support for folks. That said, we only have about 35 of our voucher holders in the SSP program. That's what we're able to do at this point in terms of our contract out of the 1,250 voucher holders that we have. So we'd like to see that program grow exponentially, because what we do there is not only working with people on their own goals around employment, around financial well-being, potentially around a goal around home ownership or education, or even starting a business. It can be any of those things, and we're working with people then to find them the right resources to pursue those goals. So that's employment and job readiness work. We do some of that work ourselves at Wayfinders, but we also work with our workforce development partners in our region. We do financial empowerment and credit counseling with folks. And then for those who are on the homeownership journey, we provide homeownership counseling and supports throughout the process. So it's a much more high-touch engagement that allows people to really kind of work closely with, as the person who runs this program as the head of our rental assistance driver is a go-getter. She's a go-getter for the people she works with, helping eliminate the barriers, right? There's easy to get people off track, right? There's so many challenges that we all face every day, that car repair, that emergency medical situation. And so having people who work on our team who are so solutions oriented, that also have the resources then to address those barriers, make a huge difference in helping people get from just their aspirations to realizing them. And that's what we're really about in terms of our economic mobility work through the SSP program.
Yeah, thanks. How about the same?
Yeah, Sarah, I'll build on that a little bit. Everything that Keith mentioned, we're also providing, the big struggle again is that it's capped. So we can have a maximum of 50 people in the program. We could have hundreds more. That's all about resources and funding. So we'd like to see the program expanded and more money invested in it. And similarly, we have an amazing team at NeighborWorks. Shout out to Kelly, Kathy, Maria, Angelica. When they're faced with sort of a program that's stagnant like this and they know how much more it could be, they teamed up with our fundraising team. We went to the private sector. We brought in private funds to support an emergency fund program to help families with those emergencies that Keith mentioned, when a car breaks down and other things, to keep them in the program and not allow those everyday hiccups that come up to derail them in their goals. So we're doing everything we can to support the families as much as possible, but we'd love to see opportunities to grow and expand these programs for MRVP.
Yeah. How about from your perspective, Beverly? Are there things that you would like to see administrators or landlords do to better support tenants once they have a voucher and they want to increase their income, they want to navigate these cliff effects? What do you think we can all do to better support them?
I do think a program like this that they're talking about would be very helpful. In talking with Adrienne, I had the opportunity to have conversations with her, and one of the things I heard from her too is, let's do some groups, let's do some communication, hear our voices, listen to us. We have ideas too. We do want to grow. We do want to move on and make space for others. Yeah. Help us get there. And I do think it was really exciting for me to hear about this program.
That's
the
great.
SSP, right?
Yeah.
SSP.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add that, again, the reports show that 80% of the households that are receiving this voucher are making under $25,000 a year. That's under $70 a day. So these financial fitness programs, credit repair, and savings are critically important to these families and their growth.
Yeah.
And make it at times that the tenants could attend.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we create programs and we do things within our work schedule.
Yes.
And it's really difficult for tenants to show up, and then we say, see, they didn't come. Well, they can't come.
Right.
So,
Very true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have in this room, I think, a room full of advocates, program and policy folks. We all want to know, right, what we can do to support this. So I would ask, we have just a minute left for each of you. I would love for each of you to leave this room full of partners here with what's the one thing that they can do. So as you envision what we all can do, what is that sort of one thing you want to leave us with that we can do to support this program, whether it's through our advocacy or funding dollars? What is it that we can do to make sure that this works? And we'll just go right down the line.
Quickly, for me, it's help us build a broader coalition of support for MRVP. We think of tenants naturally, but this is a landlord program. This is a development program, a real estate development program. We need a broad coalition to expand this program. It's critical for the health of our state. We are alone. We cannot rely on the federal government. This is our program. We need to invest in it. So this room, there are not a lot of landlords here. I feel like this report starts us on the road to bringing landlords into the tent here and helping us expand this program and codify it once and for all.
That's great.
I want to say first, celebrate the accomplishment so far. Just celebrate what we've done, what we've gotten to, but also press and keep listening to the voices of tenants and landlords. Partner with them more. And I do believe that there's enhancement coming, and I'm excited and I'm hopeful.
Well, I'll just say it. We need more resources again. I'll just say it. We all want to do more, and we can make this program really even better if we have more resources. It's about the resources to support the existing voucher holders and existing landlords, but to grow the program and to really create the kind of housing stability and housing future that we want for our Commonwealth. MRVP is a key linchpin to that. So we need the resources to grow it. There are lots of choices that we have to make every year in the budget. This is the place where we need to deepen our investment to get to the outcomes we want, because these are not just about housing stability outcomes. These are about economic outcomes. These are about educational outcomes. These are about health outcomes for the people who live in stable housing. It's clearly demonstrated that we'll see those results not only in this generation of people get them, but in future generations if we make this investment now. So let's do it.
All right, well, I want to invite you all to stay right here because we have about 10 minutes that we can do question and answer. But first, before we jump into Q&A, I want to ask you all to give a round of applause to this great panel.
Good job. And how about for Sarah?
It's so great. It's so great for us to get to be together today. And I really want to invite each of you into this conversation. You probably have some question that has arisen in your minds as you've been listening to so many different speakers. Thank you for welcoming all of us here. As we collaborate and share our thoughts with you. We want to hear from you. So we have mics in the aisles. There's one here and one over there. So if you have a question, go ahead and one in the back. I would say just go ahead and maybe make your way to a microphone or put your hand up so the microphone can come to you. And we're going to start over here, and then I'll get over to Brad on that side.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thank you all for the panel and the great work you've done. My name is Michael Kane. I'm the director of the Mass Alliance of HUD Tenants. We organize tenants with lived experience, including MRVP tenants. We spearheaded Cookie Day this year, which was the major effort to increase funding. 4 years ago, our members were paying 40% of income in the MRVP program, and that was true for like decades. It was our members who proposed, and we worked with CHAPA, to get it passed to lower the rent to 30%. So you can imagine what it would be like if people were paying 40. Because it's very unstable, right now it has to be renewed in an outside section of the budget each year. We really desperately need the codification bill to make it permanent. So we welcome your support for this at the State House. The Senate budget came out yesterday. They did not propose to increase funding beyond the governor's request. We're going to be going up with CHAPA this week to try to get an amendment to increase the funding by $47 million to $300 million. So I'd like to invite everybody here to help with that, to contact your senator to co-sponsor that amendment and to vote for it to increase the funding, and to co-sponsor the codification bill. So far we've lined up 17 senators to co-sponsor the codification bill. So we need your help on that. So talk to me or Jordan after from CHAPA after this about how you can plug into the lobby. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to go to a question. I think there was one over here. Brad.
Is this thing on? All right. Hi, thank you everyone. Brad Kramer from One Family. We work with about 450 families across the state supporting homelessness prevention and economic mobility through education and career opportunity. And I wanted first to note that I appreciate the focus on both the vital importance of MRVP and the need to invest more in MRVP and also expand the self-sufficiency program, and also to identify ways that we can improve things. And I think Adrienne touched on this in her comments, but there was a report that came out about 5 years ago that was published by the Boston Foundation, working with Suffolk Law School Housing Discrimination Testing Program and the analysis group, and they found really outrageous levels of discrimination against voucher holders and also on the basis of race. And there's as a result of that report, there's legislation pending. It's been refiled. It's an act to end housing discrimination in the Commonwealth. Here's a long-winded lead up, but my question is for Olivia and Adrienne. I don't want to put you on the spot, but to what extent did that come up in focus groups? And Adrienne, if you wanted to share your experience, that would be great too. Thanks.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, so I think it definitely came up in focus groups numerous times. I think a majority of what we heard regarding discrimination was about voucher holders just not wanting to be accepted as a voucher holder, right? Landlords just didn't want to deal with the process of accepting a voucher holder. The inspections can be kind of a pain. We did hear a little bit about this in the landlord interviews too, not as much as we heard about it in the focus groups. There was there were a few folks who mentioned discrimination on other bases, but I think the big thing that came up quite frequently was landlords just don't want us. Adrienne, I'm sure you can speak to that better than I can.
In reference to what Olivia said, I feel personally that's what I was just coming across, a lot of landlords who didn't want to deal with Section 8 or voucher holders. Personally speaking to a few of them, and I could completely understand, they might have had tenants that were there, left the place a complete mess, so this became more money out of their pocket. I'm not a landlord, but I sympathize, and I said eventually one day I will own a home and probably have to rent out. So fair is fair. I couldn't, like I said, I just couldn't. Every house, like, look, this is my first time, one of those type of things. But I did vibe it. I did feel it. Unfortunately, I can't blame them for their experience, but I would just hope something in the future would change. Thank
Well
you.
said.
Come over here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Frances Velasquez, and I work for Alice Early Learning. And I help a lot of my families by what the gentleman was just saying, discrimination. So right now I am a voucher holder. I've been for the last 18 years in the program to buy my own home. But I experienced the discrimination. I didn't know that you going with a voucher and someone saying, oh no, we're not gonna accept that voucher. I took it upon myself to go after them through legal aid because I feel as though they didn't know what I was going through. I was living in a home where the mice was so infested that I had a car accident. When I went to lay my head on the pillow, the mouse came out my pillow. And so I needed to move, and I had 2 little ones. But me going after them, I wasn't trying to hurt them, but I just wanted to let them know you can't do this to the families. The outcome was I got compensated for what they did, and for 5 years they could not rent to someone paying market rent. They had to pay to they had to rent to someone that had a voucher because it wasn't fair. And I was desperate. I was depressed. I was looking, and for them to say no, we're not renting to you because you have that voucher. I live in a home right now. I treat that home like it's my house. The inside, the outside, like that's my home. I have to treat it, even though it belongs to the landlord, I have to treat it as my home. So now I help my families at Alice. They say, oh, I'm going through this, or they're saying that they're not gonna take it. Well, you know that's basically saying, you're not gonna get this job because you're black, or you're not gonna get this job because you're gay. That is discrimination, and we will fight for it, because at the end of the day, all you have to say, fill out the application, and you don't have to call the person back, but give the person the opportunity, because we're all going through, you don't know what the family's going through. Thank you.
All right, so I will say, I think one of the things that I really valued about this report was, it is so good to hear people's stories. And it's good to hear people's stories in rooms like this. It's good to hear them one-on-one. And it was also really powerful to be able to pair them with the public polling effort, because it allowed us to really hear the stories sort of behind the data, right? And to understand how prevalent are these stories, and then also why, like to be able to ask those questions of why. So this has been such a valuable experience for us. I want to leave you with someone who can give their closing remarks, who, when I think of, who has been an excellent long-term advocate for the MRVP, I think of Rachel Heller. So Rachel, would you give us some closing words?
First, I want to start off by thanking the Boston Foundation, Mass Inc., United Way, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, who are really partners in this work. And I think that says a lot about a government agency that wants to pair with advocates and researchers to talk with people using the program to improve the program. Metro Housing Boston, and really everyone who was part of the research, part of the work, part of this event. It is wonderful, like Sarah was saying, to be in the room with all of you today, to be in the room with people who are working for positive change and care about each other. These are difficult times. There's no getting around it. And so it's particularly meaningful and encouraging to be here with all of you today. While it's easy to fall into despair at this moment when we see our federal programs at risk, when we see our Fair Housing Act, we talked all about rental voucher discrimination, when we see our Fair Housing Act and our fair housing centers really being undermined and being dismantled, and seeing the strain on our state and local resources, it is very easy to put our heads in the sand right now and feel like, I give up. However, I think MRVP is a story that can really inspire us and remind us that we need to double down and fight even harder. So MRVP, I'm always like this historian when I speak about MRVP, which makes me feel very old. But okay, so in the 1990s, MRVP, I wasn't working on it then, okay? But MRVP was funded at $120 million and served over 18,000 households. By the early 2000s, this program is being destroyed. The program is down to $24 million in funding. It was serving a few thousand households. Really, everyone had given up. No one was working on it, and it was just dwindling. Until something changed. An incredible organization named Homes for Families, which was made up and led by families who experienced homelessness, working in partnership with service providers and advocates, said this is the solution. And they created a coalition called the Housing Solutions Campaign. Its sole focus was to grow MRVP. And it was scrappy. I mean, when we started out, people did not expect us to be successful. It really was a very small effort in the beginning, but it grew and it grew. So in the first year of this campaign, we're writing like fact sheets at night. We're trying to create whatever we can. We started to reach out to a lot of other groups and organizations, like Rob was saying, involving developers and landlords, involving individuals. It wasn't just about families, but individuals experiencing homelessness, housing authorities, and really bringing a lot of people together. We worked with a first-year representative in the House. No one expected this to go anywhere. We had an event, Michael referred to Cookie Day. Parents who were experiencing homelessness were looking for something to do during school vacation week. Let's go to the State House. And they took this bill, MRVP, campaign to the State House. No one in the legislature remembered what MRVP was. They started to remember because the families were there to tell them what this program was, how important it was, and how it needed to be invested in. Got a Globe editorial, things started to change. And that year, the program started to turn around. We got $1 million investment. Doesn't sound like a lot. This program was dwindling. There were no increases coming. And it grew from there. Then it started to get real credibility. It's now become the #1 program that legislators are asking for because they know their constituents need help with housing and they know MRVP and rental assistance programs are the solution. So this program today will now be funded at over $250 million. Remember what I said? It was down to $24 million. No one expected it to come back. It is back. And while we would like to see far more funding than is being proposed, it is a testament to everybody who's been doing this work and to not count things out, to know that things look dark right now, but this is when we get together and this is when we do the work and we grow this program. So there's a lot for you to do. And I have a list of things that I want you to do today and then things that I want you to take away. So one, Rob mentioned the coalition. Join the coalition. That coalition that started from homeless families exists today. Jordan Stocker, raise your hand, back there from Chapa, is organizing this coalition. Talk to him. Add your organization. We need everybody to be a part of this. We need to grow our rental assistance programs. Number 2, budget advocacy. The Senate just came out with their budget proposal yesterday. MRVP is not where we want it to be. It's at level funding, essentially. I say level. It's level. It's more than last year, but costs increase. So essentially no new vouchers. So we need you to advocate. We need you to call your senator. We will have an action alert going out soon that will tell you who to call so that you can make sure your senator is on board. Number 3, the legislative advocacy that Rob was mentioning, Michael mentioned. We need to put MRVP into statute. It is wild that this program exists only through the budget. Things could change like that. We need to bake that structure into law. And then 4, and this seems a little bit removed, but it is not. Be the voice of yes in your community. We need more homes. We do not have enough homes. And the more expensive housing is, the harder it's going to hit people with the lowest incomes. Trevor talked about vouchers being an important part of development. If you want homes that people with extremely low incomes can afford in your community, you've got to say yes to housing in your community. Show up at those local meetings and be the voice of yes. Now, what I hope you'll take away is that the story of MRVP is really important here. The campaign was started by people who are experiencing the problem, people who knew the solution. And we always need to keep the people who use these programs at the center of this work, participating equally in this work, helping us to understand what kinds of changes need to be made and how to grow this program. So that is the families, it's the individuals, it's the landlords, it's the administrators. We need to listen. And I just want you all to, when you leave today, again, it's a time where you could be putting your head in the sand, but don't. I need you to keep your heads up. I need you to get involved, and we need you to go to the State House. I feel like we should walk over there right now. So thank you all for coming, and I look for our action alerts like any moment now.